What's up? We're back. It's Modern Relics podcast. We're live in all kinds of places.
All kinds of places.
Yeah, man. It's a sad afternoon. It's sad if you are a Jets fan and you've been waiting to get out of this decades-long slump of shit quarterback play, and you finally get Aaron Rodgers, who plays a total of 4 snaps before his Achilles injury. He's probably retiring after this. He's 39 years old, so who knows, but he's out for the season. It's sad if you're a fantasy football player because almost every starter you had pooped the bed. It's sad if you own Liberty safes in America. That's bad.
That is true.
It's sad if you're an American living in New Mexico. It's not a good day, dude. We got through the 9/11 thing, and now we're right back to, which, by the way, I noticed a lack of like reverent material this September 11th. Like, you know what I mean? Like on social media, you generally get the never forget or the American flag or the like thoughts and prayers thing. And among my feeds, which consist pretty heavily of like cars, guns, motorcycles, explosions, ninjas, you know, boy stuff that happens across my feed, it just felt like a lack of that. But here we are. It is Tuesday, September the 12th. Lots of sadness going on, but we're still fucking here. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Yeah. Good. Good to hear.
Yeah, but I would say that the lack of September 11th feelings and internet kind of postings and such. I would imagine that it's algorithm and regional, because I got a ton of it on my feed.
Oh yeah.
But I actually, besides 9/11, which I mean, we can all tell the story about where we were when 9/11 happened. Mine is
I remember exactly where I was when I found out.
Yeah.
I remember what I was wearing.
More so, you know what else? Do you know what else happened on 9/11 that it seems to get forgotten pretty frequently and does not get brought up a lot, but it happened on 9/11 as well. And that's the Benghazi situation.
Yeah.
So we forget those guys. My wife and I try to watch 13 Hours, which is a phenomenal movie, by the way, every year on 9/11. Just because it is, A, it's a great movie, but B, it's also a reminder as to where our government started, you know, really showing their colors and being something that, you know, obviously had been going on quite a bit further and, you know, can basically be boiled down to 1913, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Well,
however,
I just rewatch a bunch of YouTube clips of Congressman Trey Gowdy talking about Benghazi on 9/11 over and over again.
Just hammering. Yeah. It is chef's kiss to watch that.
Yeah. Oh my god. You can't. You're an
chef's kiss watching that man at work,
and you're just like, you fucking get him. You fucking tell him, Steve Dave. You fucking tell him.
I wish no friend of mine to have to ever be looked at. Like, can you imagine Trey Gowdy's daughters dating one of his daughters?
I just imagine like trying to fight
that
some
silver-haired demon,
dude, trying to fight some bullshit ticket that goes to one of his courts where you're just like, wait, what? Like, yeah. Probably a different hairstyle like every time he shows up.
Every time. You know what's great is watching old episodes of Forensic Files.
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when he was just doing law work out in South Carolina. And all of a sudden he pops up in a murder trial and you're like, well, whoa. Holy shit, look at Mr. Gowdy. Yeah. Whoa. And his hair's not all silver. It's like, it's bizarre, but it's him. But man, what a waste. What a waste of like one of the most surgically gifted tongues I've ever known or ever seen.
Well, it's funny to me how the pendulum swung the other way in populated politics, because I'm gonna fuck all these guys up. The dude from Utah, Jason Chaffetz, Trey Gowdy. There's a bunch of dudes that came in under the Tea Party movement. And they were all freshman congressmen, like sort of, I think it was a full year before the Benghazi trial stuff kicked off. Maybe it was 2 years before that. And there was just a real passion among a lot of that dais in Congress for seeking the truth that seemed to be apolitical, even though there was some party line towing on both sides back in the day. And the media was obviously, this was ramping up into the everything is very orange and bad and very orange and bad and racist and sexist and, everything, there's toxic masculinity and all this other stuff. But what's really disheartening is when he left, he left and he did a big thing on, I think it was Fox or something, where he was like, the reason I'm not seeking to rerun is you can't get anything done. I would rather, I think however he put it, work for a blind woman holding scales where things seem fair and I can make a difference in my own, district than on the Hill. I hate it here. It's a zoo. And that really sucks because
it does.
We need more people like Jason Chaffetz and Trey Gowdy and all these dudes,
And we do have some Freedom Caucus people still there, but there's not enough of them to push the needle. Right. And it had Gowdy stayed and Chaffetz stayed and a couple other people stayed. Like we in Idaho took one of them. He retired out of the DC swamp and actually came back to Idaho. He's actually our current attorney general. His name's Raul Labrador, and he just got elected this last election for attorney general. But I think he's got his eyes on a governorship once he's done some damage, in a good way.
Well, if he buys a house in New Mexico, I think they'd be looking for a new one.
Yeah. Man. Well, first of all, before we get into that, I want to talk about, did you hear about the money that they put in? I'm sure you did, for Aaron Rodgers and how much they're out for the entire season with that Achilles tear.
Yeah. Now the good news with that though, is that there was a few clauses in his contract, and nobody on earth can explain an NFL salary cap. I barely can wrap my fucking head around the NBA ones, but what I'm hearing is if he didn't play a certain percentage of games, then they get their conditional draft round draft pick back that they traded for him, essentially. And so it's like they're not completely stuck. They still have a first round draft pick after all this because injuries are going to happen. It's part of the game. It's unfortunate. And he's 39 years old. So like, if you thought as a Jets fan, you were getting 4 years out of this quarterback, it was more likely you were getting 2 good years. And, it's like, he was kind of maybe on a downslope. Last year he had a broken thumb. And so there was a few excuses. The line wasn't great, but this team most of the talent is under 25 years old. There's a wonderful collection of talent that, this team decided to spend some money on finally and kind of put their best foot forward, which they've not really done ever. And so a lot of fans are really disappointed. They won that game. Like, I don't know if you watched any of the highlights or was around for Monday Night Football, but the Jets ended up winning because their defense was that good. And like, it just sucks that they have to go back to a terrible quarterback. It's the story we've all seen last year. But as far as the cap stuff is concerned, yeah, they paid a premium to get Aaron Rodgers under contract, but they're not completely up shit creek as far as like they will get their conditional first round back. They'll get to keep that. And they're just going to have to get a free agent quarterback. Hopefully somebody hits the market or, make some sort of trade, but they traded a lot. They mortgaged a lot to get this team, and there's a lot of hype around it. HBO Hard Knocks did a whole spring training thing. Rodgers looks really good. Everyone's in shape. They look ferocious, and there's just a lot of hype. One of the things that I thought was especially brutal is there's, and I love Joe Buck. He was on the call for that game, and he made a quip as they were like fading to break about like the ticket sales for opening night at home, the Jets against the Bills had more tickets sold than when the Super Bowl was hosted at MetLife a couple of years back. And so there was just so many fans that you could imagine mortgaged a lot to get a ticket to this game to see Aaron Rodgers finally turn the franchise corner, turn this bitch around. And Four plays. You know, and the internet is fucking savage. The internet is absolutely savage.
Yeah.
Like all over X, you know, you're seeing the messages like, you know, what was your favorite moment of the Rodgers era? You know, and then the responses are like, oh, that handoff to Brees Hall was unreal. You know, it's just it's like, oh, it sucks. But yeah, there's a lot of money tied up in that. You know, a lot. So I think his last contract was like, fuck, I don't know the numbers offhand. I want to say it was like north of 40 million a year, and they had it locked up for 4 or 6 years or something like that. So it was a lot of money ahead of this one. So yeah, ouch.
Yikes! Wow!
Yeah.
Wow! That's wild. So let's. You know, I'm not, and nor have I ever really been a super big football fan.
Right.
But the whole thing that I was really actually paying attention to and jazzed about was Aaron Rodgers, and it was due to his, you know, I'm more a political guy, so like the fact that Aaron was one of the dudes that really kind of stood up against the giant and said, I'm not doing this with the whole COVID vaccine thing. That's kind of what cemented him in my mind, outside of him just being known as a very phenomenal quarterback within a sports play that I don't typically follow. Right. You know, my wife used to be a big Seahawks fan, but like we haven't watched football in years. But the fact that that guy was coming out on September 11th for the New York Jets,
right?
Which, you know, was significant. That's kind of what I was paying attention to. So it was really even heartbreaking for me, not a football fan, to hear that he had done that within 4 plays, and yeah, just heartbreaking. When at least they won the game, but at the same time, you know, a lot of weight was put into that corner, and being
the fans in the franchise are just, I mean, absolutely crushed for this. Like you, no matter what, if he walks away from football right now, he's first ballot Hall of Fame, no questions asked. Like, but you know, I think not last year, but the 2 back-to-back seasons prior to that, he was the NFL MVP. Like, he's awesome, you know. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, you're right. I mean, because they did they had a big FDNY reverence thing. It was on September 11th, like big opening night for the Jets. It was brutal, and they played their hearts out defensively and ended up winning the game as a result. But it's a soul crusher. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, let's chat. Let's chat about.
We're just talking.
What? We're just talking. That's all we're doing.
I don't know. Every week, you know, you see this stuff and you're just like, what am I gonna? Oh, okay. Like, yeah. So that happened. Right.
And it's hard to, because I don't want to dominate the entire thing with like bad news and politics. Like, we kind of set out on this thing to try to maybe throw a little dash here and there of politics and stuff on it, but it happens to be that politics are without a doubt pop culture now. And it seems to be flooding every social media stream, every news outlet stream. So it's really hard to avoid it in a lot of ways, especially when some of the shit is so wild that it's almost impossible not to talk about. And I would love to, that's why I wanted to talk more about like Aaron Rodgers and stuff like that, just to kind of break away from it. But there's some stuff that we just can't avoid, man. There's a story going on that we cannot avoid.
Right.
It does tie into one of our other kind of common themes, which is guns. You know, you and I both love firearms. Mm-hmm. And so we tend to kind of talk frequently about that stuff anyway. But when something is so on its face ridiculous that involves the Second Amendment or involves gun culture in any capacity, I mean, this story Do you want to talk about this story, because this is crazy?
Yeah, and it's hard to do the "I told you so" move, but and we haven't done it in this theater exactly, but in other podcasts and podcasts that I've guested on as well, people have asked, with regard to specifically the Second Amendment, but with regard to the restriction of civil rights, generally speaking, how do I think the doomsday scenario is going to play itself out? And my instinct was it's a public health crisis, right? Like we're seeing executive orders and mandates coming from people that are aligning themselves to the perceived power and authority of organizations like the Center for Disease Control, right? And not just to beat the COVID horse or anything, but the last time I checked, the Center for Disease Control was not the United States Congress where laws are made. And so I was like, it's going to be
no authority.
It's going to be executive orders, right? It's going to be in the guise of public health crisis, and it's going to inflate, elevate. It's like kind of imposing your will, whether it's, virtue signaling or personal ideology over what most of these politicians gain their position from, which is practicing law. So it's not like they don't fucking know. But basically, the New Mexico governor, I just had her name too. It's what is this lady's name? Michelle Lujan. Lujan. She's 63 years old. She's born in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And my buddy that I keep threatening to come on the show is actually from Los Alamos and has a house out there now. Anyway, she decided to pass an executive order because of under the 30-day public health order. It's an executive mandate that would suspend the right to carry firearms in most public places around Albuquerque. So it's not the whole state, it's just one district. We're just dipping our toe in just to see how hard the pushback's going to be. And the logic that she used behind it was pretty irrational. It was so that we can accept that there's going to be unbelievable feedback and pushback, and that it's going to get the conversation going so that people will address the real issues. And we're going to do it by suspending a problem that she's long had with firearms, which is that no one should have any. So that we will come up with a better solution then, because she's just forced to think about the 11-year-old child that recently died. And New Mexico has
in a drive-by. Let's be clear.
Yeah, New Mexico has a wild amount of gun violence, by the way. Now, I could sit here and I could tell you, yeah, I was right. I saw this coming. It's playing out like the playbook I thought. And that, let's find a common argument and say, well, if you restrict the guns from the law-abiding citizens, then they can't fend for themselves because those that will break the law are not buying guns legally anyway. Like, that's common knowledge. What scares me is...
Well, she was even asked about that.
Yeah, and she agrees to it. What scares me, I think...
She said, oh yeah, I know that they're going to have them.
Right. She, in the same press conference, by the way. And I encourage people listening to this podcast or watching it to go check it out. Because it's only going to open up an opportunity of time. Not that this is going to hold up in court, but it would only open up an opportunity of time for people to commit even more violent acts, because now they know that people can't defend themselves. But what's really freaky is if somebody that drunk on power decides that 30 days wasn't enough time and extends the executive order because the health crisis hasn't abated. It's almost like declaring martial law to remain in a position of power to a certain degree. It's just leveraging a different mechanism that has shown to be extremely successful when you hide behind a health crisis. So then what? Is 60 days not enough? Is 90 days not enough?
Well, and I think literally just...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, she literally, by doing this, even though this was a very particular subsect of what she was, what she was trying to manage here, but what she inadvertently or intentionally did was open up the door that says, I can literally bypass any rule, law, or governing system by decree. Like, anything I want to do, if I just say, oh, I feel there's an emergency, I get to just stay in power. I just get to do my own thing, and I can take away any right, because according to her, all rights are not what was the terminology she used, are not
basically not
permanent or
not
whatever,
substantive enough to supersede a health crisis, more or less. It's like that's moral virtue signaling. And what's kind of ironic is that I watched a movie for no apparent reason this week. It was that high budget Robin Hood production that had the dude from Gladiator in it, Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that movie, basically, in order for the king to gain favor among all of the, England sects that were starting to get pissed off at all the taxation and stuff and starting to splinter off, in order to rally them up, he takes the suggestion of Robin Longstride at the time, that if we all band together and win, you basically allow us to own our own land, keep what we work for, earn the rights to the things that we have off the sweat of our brow. And he's like, yeah, totally, let's do that. And they all go into battle, and there's a big fight sequence, and the good guys win. And then in the last scene, he walks out to sign the decree in front of all these adoring subjects and basically shits all over it, lights it on fire. And he's like, no, God put me in charge. I'm the king and you're my subjects. Like, so to even insinuate that you could have your own stuff is unlawful, and it's against God. I'm that special. I have that much power. And so he then decrees Robin Longstride is now, who's masquerading as Robin Locksley and is known as Robin the Hood, is now a wanted criminal forever. And it kind of fades to black. And that's like, and this is how the legend of Robin Hood begins. So it's like a prequel type of thing. Fun movie. But I find it ironic.
I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it's great. It's because they set up Robin Hood in a totally different way. And like, you jump into King Richard's crusade, and Robin Hood is actually Robin Longstride. There's a whole backstory about him figuring out like where he's from and all this stuff, and ends up Locksley dies, so he has to take his sword back to his father and commits to a dying man, like, I'll restore this to your father and restore your honor and all this stuff. The father is blind but knows who Robin Longstride is. He's like, Longstride? Like, oh, I know that name. You need to stick around here. So tell you what, we're going to tell everyone in town that you're actually my son returning from the crusade. And, here's Maid Marian, and you guys are going to pretend to be husband and wife while we figure out your past a little bit, and some other stuff needs to happen. And so that's kind of how the story unfolds. It's really, it's just like
watch that one. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's just like Gladiator and the high budget, Ridley Scott type of look to it and all that shit. And it's really well done. But yeah, I just turned it on because it was just there and I was watching it, and it reminded me a lot of somebody with that much power that knows the law or the right thing to do and just says, "Fuck you, I'm in charge." That's what's commonly lost, is that politicians their job title is not in charge, it's public servant.
Right.
And
that's what I tell my kids constantly, is that these people aren't your leaders. That word gets misused. These people are your servants. They're public servants. These people have volunteered to be the middleman, the voice between the people that they represent. They're representatives. And it goes across the board, all the way up the ladder. Those are representatives for the people. Yep. They're not leaders. And
they're elected servants.
Yeah. And what I tell my kids is, like, those people are literally the people who turn around and go, okay, I'm going to Washington. What do you want me to tell them? And then you tell them as a voting body, saying, this is what we want.
Right.
They go to Washington and they go, this is what my people want, and I have to fight for it. So whatever it takes for me to fight for these people and what they want,
right,
is what I'm fighting for, because I'm their representative. That's right. What the job actually is. And people have gotten it totally blurry, and they do not understand what government leadership is supposed to look like, because they think it's leadership, not servitude.
And it's Yeah.
So
I'll set you the tone. This article was written by Susan Montoya Bryan. She's from Associated Press. It just leads Albuquerque, New Mexico, AP. So federal lawsuits, cries for impeachment, and outside protests. Democratic New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham said that she would welcome a fight after announcing an emergency order to suspend the right to carry firearms in public places and around Albuquerque. That's exactly what she's getting. Since she's issued a 30-day public health order on Friday, a fury has rained down from gun owners, state Republican lawmakers, civil rights advocates, even some in her own party question the move. The sheriff who oversees the county that includes
California's Ted Lieu.
Yeah.
California's Ted Lieu came out her, and David Hogg tweeted against her. That blew everyone away. He's like, even if David Hogg says, yo, you went too far, you might have gone too far. So anyway, continue. Sorry.
No, it's all good. That's what we're here for. The sheriff who oversees the county that includes New Mexico's largest city, Albuquerque, vowed Monday not to enforce it, joining the county's top prosecutor and the Albuquerque mayor and the city's police chief. Quote, it's unconstitutional and there's no way that she can enforce that order, Bernalillo County Sheriff John Allen said during a news conference. This ban does nothing to curb gun violence, end quote. A guns rights group filed a federal lawsuit within 24 hours asking a court to block the order from taking effect, and other federal lawsuits followed shortly after. Critics denounced the order as an infringement on the gun rights of law-abiding citizens. GOP state lawmakers also proposed initiating impeachment proceedings against the governor, a move that would require buy-in from the Democrats who control the legislature. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham announces an order restricting people from carrying guns in Bernalillo County for 30 days during a news conference in the governor's office on Friday, September the 8th. Quote, my constituents have reached out to me in droves, emailing and texting me that this is insane, this is horrifying, this is unconstitutional, said Republican State Representative John Block of Alamogordo, representing a conservative stronghold in southern New Mexico. Lujan Grisham, a former congresswoman, began a second term in January and can't run again immediately for another term. A key legislative ally of the governor on gun control initiatives urged her to rescind the public health order. Here's another quote. An unconstitutional approach undermines the important collaboration gun issues deserve and the important role of a governor to lead genuine reforms. This is from Democratic State Senator Joseph Cervantes of Las Cruces, who wrote on X, Cervantes has successfully sponsored a 2020 red flag law, making it easier for authorities to take weapons from people deemed dangerous to themselves or others. And that's the end of that quote. I'm going to continue on, but just a quick pause here. That's another really, really manipulative and annoying piece of the advice she's getting from peers, especially in her own party line. It's like, hey, an unconstitutional approach undermines the collaboration that this issue deserves. Like, we've been successfully fucking people over for a long time, taking an inch at a time. Please stop making a big splash and like really rallying the rest of people out of their apathy and all hating on us at once, including people we
They're
never...
like, hey, you're bringing too much notice to us. Yeah. That's exactly what that says.
Not to reveal the fucking playbook, but yeah.
Right. Like, we've been successfully chipping away at the edges of the Second Amendment for many years. We're getting real close to being able to do some other damage, but you just exposed our hand. Yeah. And we aren't happy about it. And that's exactly what that guy was just saying. The reality is the second... Yeah, absolutely. The reality is the Second Amendment is final and it is clear, as all of the amendments are, and anything that isn't clear falls under the 10th Amendment, which goes to the states. But the states cannot violate the first 10 amendments, period. In fact, all the other ones as well.
Here's the other thing. I looked up the health code, like the health code that allows the state to empower the governor to do the executive order on behalf of health crises. And it explicitly states so that you can protect the citizens of your state from civil liberty infringements.
So she's doing exactly the opposite of what the actual tenant within.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And it's like,
wow.
look, dude, 5 out of 4 kids are bad with fractions, but even that doesn't make sense to me. So, like, taking it on face value. So it continues. The head of the lobbying arm of the NRA, Randy Kozuch, and I have my own issues with the NRA, issued a statement Sunday calling in the order shocking and an act of administrative fiat. The ACLU voiced objections that the governor's actions could lead to overzealous The ACLU voiced objections that the governor's actions could lead to overzealous policing and infringe on privacy. And they have their own twist to it. It's inhumane. This is a quote. It's inhumane that we haven't eliminated the #1 killer of children and teens in this country, she said. So I salute the governor for making that first brave step towards saving our children. Yeah. But they don't want
pretty much.
They don't want undue racial profiling, it goes on to say. The Catholic Church, they have their spin. The Catholic Church also weighed in. Lujan Grisham, quote, has been consistent in addressing gun safety through legislation and is not now attacking the Second Amendment. She knows the law, Santa Fe Archbishop John C. Webster said in a statement, which is, if that's the actual quote, they either mistyped it or it's a complete contradiction to the point he was trying to make. And is not now attacking the Second Amendment. I think it is is now attacking the Second Amendment, but this is an AP article. That's actually how it's written. New Mexico was among 5 states within the highest rates of gun killings in 2021, according to an analysis from the nonpartisan Pew Research Center based on death certificate data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The same CDC that said COVID death was killing everybody if you tested positive for COVID and had a gunshot wound in your forehead. Still, it was counted as a COVID death. Just nonpartisan.
And once
take
again,
that for what it's worth.
And let me remind you that the CDC, the ATF, and a bunch of other agencies are not legal entities.
Right.
They are not
law
actually governing bodies. They're not law enforcement. They cannot enact law. They cannot write law. They cannot proclaim at all a mandate. They're not allowed. It is actually against the way that our system works for anybody, any governor or any outside vehicle, whether it be a corporation or an entity that is a nonprofit or any other agency outside of our 3 governing bodies. That's it. The rest of it does not count. And we have just we have just allowed, out of pure ignorance, generational ignorance, have allowed the authority, given the authority to these bodies, to these agencies that have no authority, and we all just abide by it. When the people who actually have a modicum of understanding of it turn around and go, who those guys? They don't have a say in this fight. Why are we listening to them? And they're like, oh no, we got to listen to them.
Well,
but why?
Popular gun rights advocate, and I'm a bit of a fan of his, Coleon Noir, who I'm sure you've seen, had a lot to say about this. One of the things was the most perplexing part of that was that the order addressed open carry and concealed carry, and he's like, well, the whole fucking point of concealed carry is that no one knows you have it. So what, in order to back up that public health thing, we're going to maybe break a few more illegal search and seizure constitutional protections in order to get to the point that you might be concealed carrying? I mean, it's really unlocking a lot. So, so the CDC found 11.7 killings per 100,000 people in New Mexico, just below Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and the District of Columbia. So going back to the ACLU quote, this kind of approach leads to the over-policing of our communities, racial profiling, and increased misery in the lives of already marginalized people, said, I'm going to fuck this up, Lolita Moskorowicz, the litigation manager for the ACLU of New Mexico. Quote, the governor should be following evidence-based solutions such as meaningful diversion and violence intervention programs and addressing the root causes of violence, end quote. The order applies to open and concealed carry in public places. It's tied to a threshold for violent crime rates currently only met in metropolitan Albuquerque. So it's like her little test bed. Violators could face civil penalties and a fine of up to $5,000. Gubernatorial spokeswoman Caroline Sweeney said residents could still transport guns to some private locations, such as a gun range or a gun store, but only with a trigger lock, a container, or a mechanism making it impossible to discharge. Large group of people gathered.
Going to get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this woman's going to get sued into oblivion.
Yeah.
Like it won't even need to go anywhere near the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is just going to go, no, you guys handle this because it's real easy. Mm-hmm. It's real easy. And there isn't, man, if this, it is so in the weeds. It is so over the line that, you know, even the Attorney General for New Mexico has come out and said, I'm not going to defend this governor, even though that's his job, is to defend the state of New Mexico and the governor. And I know this because we've gotten into heavy debates here in Idaho as to what exactly the Attorney General's job is. And it first the state of New Mexico, followed by the law, followed by the governor. He's saying no to the governor. Right. He's saying, nope, you broke the law. You broke the law. Right. To enact this mandate and to try to put this down on the New Mexico people. I cannot defend you, and I will not, and I don't want to. Right. Which is amazing. And if I'm not mistaken, he's even a Democrat. Yeah. So it is a wild situation this woman, I don't know what she was thinking. Like, did she think she was going to get a little bit of pushback and then they were going to get the conversation started? This is the biggest pile of shit she could have stepped in ever.
Well, and this shouldn't be
it's the most egregious.
Yeah. That's why we're talking about it, right? Like it is that egregious. Yeah. Like that's the perfect word for it. It is egregious to the point that it's irritating. And this is a state close to my neck of the woods.
Right. It's the most egregious violation of the Second Amendment ever in the United States history.
Yeah.
And there's nothing even close to it. And so for her to even just say the Second Amendment is now abolished here in Albuquerque is absolutely bananas, because it is a constitutional carry state. You can open carry and you can conceal carry, and she just shut it both down.
Yeah.
And that's wild.
So Lujan Grisham said she was driven by a number of recent child shooting deaths. It's, quote, it's time to declare an end to this kind of violence. It is, in fact, an epidemic, end quote. She said last week while acknowledging criminals would surely ignore her order. So, yeah. Violent crime has become especially pronounced in Metro Albuquerque, where homicides have been on a record-setting pace in recent years. In 2022, a new record was set with 120 people killed, according to the police data. This year, there have been 76 victims as of September the 8th. Gun-toting protesters held a peaceful rally in Albuquerque's Old Town area with another scheduled Tuesday in the heart of Albuquerque. Sheriff Allen claims the governor sprung her plans on officials only moments before her news conference, leaving him shocked and irritated. He plans to push lawmakers to call a special session to address violence in Albuquerque. Quote, I have to turn my irritation and anger into solutions, Allen said. So she clobbered her staff and her constituent group with this only moments before announcing it on air. And I think this little test shitstorm that she stepped in and needs to be severely punished. You need to be impeached. Oh, yeah. You need to be drug around and shamed publicly. You need to lose your job immediately. 100%. You should be forced to offer all your constituents
jail time,
an apology, and that's before sentencing. How dare you be so brazen? And you know the law. Like, you know the law. So and she literally said, you know, and obviously I'm paraphrasing here, I don't care about the law. Right.
She literally said that, and she goes, the law doesn't matter if I say it doesn't matter.
Did you watch that press
And-
conference too when she announced it?
Yes.
She recognized right away. She's like, yeah, I know this isn't going to do anything, but I'm basically putting my responsibility as a governor to fix the crime rate that
And my
I deem in
safety.
process and all of our safeties. I'm setting all of that aside to prove a point that you guys need to come up with better solutions then. Otherwise, this is what you get. No, it fucking isn't. The Constitution says
No.
we have rights to these things, not privileges, not it's cool to have, not because of hunting and like, do we really need an AR-15 for the deer on the move? And none of it has anything to do with the intent that you're putting on a firearm. You can call it an assault weapon if you want. I can call this an assault cell phone if I know how to kill somebody with it. That's imbuing an inanimate object with intent. None of those word salad things matter at all to the fact that God gave you that right if you're born in this country. Them's the rules, all right. Not
the point of
nice
the
to
Bill of
have.
Rights is that this is a piece of paper that says this is the stuff that government can't touch.
Correct.
And are actually obligated to protect.
That specific
They're
right.
yours regardless.
If you want to imbue intent with that specific right, is to protect us from people like Michelle Lynn Lujan Grisham of New Mexico. It's to protect yourself
Precisely.
should the tyrannical government ever rise to, impose their will. So that's why we bring it up. Like, obviously, I don't want to make it a right-wing shit show where that's all we talk about all the time. This is critical. And I think people need to be talking about this stuff. Whether you like guns or not, what you don't want is somebody amending your constitutional freedoms, no matter which article of the Constitution they choose to fuck with. Like, what about the 8th? Would you like to repeal cruel and unusual punishment? How about the 10th on illegal search and seizure? Like, there's a lot of stuff that you gotta take what you like with what you don't like if you enjoy the freedom set forth as the basis of this country. Like, that's kind of how it is,
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and it's
raise hell about it.
Once they get rid of the first, once they get rid of the second one and the first one, it really all the other ones don't matter, and all of the other ones will go away the minute that those two are gone. And if you like any of the other ones, if you are protected by any of the other ones on a personal level, it's because of the first two, especially the second. And it doesn't make any sense, even if you don't like guns. Please do not be so historically ignorant that you don't see what happens when they take those away every single time. There isn't a single time in history when they've stripped a nation of its weapons and it got freer. There's never a time.
Never once. In fact, there's a lot of data pointing to exactly the opposite, where it got more and more and more marginalized, and there was more and more tyranny, and there was less and less freedoms, and there was almost instantaneous poverty as well. There's a psychological element to that.
The crime actually goes up.
Yeah, there's a psychological element to it, though. Like, you can't, if you can't be proud of the fact that you have some freedoms and some flexibility, the clouds of darkness just like people are depressed, it's impoverished. All of these things are interconnected.
I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, move to a 15-minute city, give them all up, fuck your car, take away your guns and rights.
Be fed plastic food and seed oils. I'm fine with that. Have fun.
So you should,
but don't do it to the rest of us.
Right, but you should totally keep your guns in a gun safe, right?
Absolutely.
It's better.
Can you believe? I know, it's hard to jump off of the ridiculousness of what's going on in New Mexico and jump right into the ridiculousness of this insane situation with Liberty gun safes.
Right.
I don't know if you've heard this or not, and I'm sure you have, it's all over the place, but some guy who was at January 6th didn't go inside, was out on the lawn. That's a whole nother topic that we can get into. Owen Schroyer, a journalist who didn't go inside the building and didn't do any insightful talk, just got what did he get? 60 days in jail. They're literally arresting journalists right now. But anyway, I don't even know the guy's name. I forget the story, but the FBI came to his house, knocked on his door, raided him, but he had one of those Liberty gun safes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was locked, and he wasn't going to give him access to it because it's his gun safe. They don't have any reason or rhyme to get in there. It's not up to them. So the feds contacted the safe company, and the idea that would even be a thing, but the feds apparently knew it was already, which is odd.
Well, I have context on this, but go on.
Okay. So they contact the Liberty, and before they even get a warrant, the warrant wasn't even asked for or issued or anything. They volunteered access to this guy's gun safe and allowed the feds to open up his gun safe.
Yep.
What was found in there? I don't know. That's not the story. The story is that your privacy means nothing.
Right.
And this company sold out. And they are paying the price for it now. They tried to backtrack a little bit, didn't work a lot. Then they doubled down, and it went. And I mean, they're going the way of of Bud Light, like on a rocket ship.
It's funny because a lot of the commentary I saw was Liberty gun safes, the Bud Light of gun safes.
Right.
It's funny you mentioned
or a
that.
Liberty safe opening up, and it's just full of Bud Light inside of it.
Yeah. So there's a few things that people should be aware of when it comes to gun safes, especially commercial safes of any kind. If you have an electronic keypad to open your safe, there is 99%, I can't use the word always, but I will say 99.9% of the time, there is what's known as a bypass code or a master code. And in order to death in the family, forgot what the combination of my safe was, whatever. Anytime you need to get into your safe and you can't, and you can prove who you are, you can take the serial number off the back of the keypad. You can call it in and prove who you are and whatever, and show them your license and give them a blood sample, whatever you got to do, whatever the requirements are. Unless, of course, you're the FBI and you just say, I'm the FBI, they'll just give it to you. There's always a bypass, always. So safes are, like any other form of, quote, commercial security that you can purchase, more of a deterrent than a catch-all, end-all, be-all. Now, if the Federal Bureau of Investigation wanted to get in there, I promise you there is a black box that you can take to a safe. You can take the keypad off, unplug the wires, plug it into the black box, and it would have deciphered the code anyway. These exist, right? And I can show some of you how to defeat a safe that you would find in like a hotel room with a strong magnet, or any of those $200 to $500 safes that you get from Staples or from Home Depot or places like that. I can just get into one of those with nothing but a magnet. I can show people how to do that on a live stream if you want. So there's a few components. Number one, there's a safe manufacturer. Number two, there's a keypad manufacturer. And number three, there is the lock behind the keypad, the actual tumbler or the actual locking mechanism. Generally speaking, like Chevrolet builds a Camaro, but they didn't build the transmission. They sourced it from Tremec. So Liberty Safes probably built the safe, but then they sourced these two components from different manufacturers. All of them have a master code. So the better of the two are the old dial tumbler ones. And the reason for that is because you can take the back of your safe door off, you can expose the tumbler, and they usually have a metal key that you shove into the back of the lock, you give it a 90 or 180 degree turn, and then you set the code combination to something the manufacturer did not provide with it, and then you pull the key out, double check that it opens and shuts. Now only one person on earth has the combination to your safe, and that's you. Now the risk you take is you delete convenience by not having a keypad. If something happens to you and nobody knows the backup combination to your safe, they have to cut it open in order to get whatever's in there out of there. But there will always be a serialized manufacturer kept historical record.
Just like they're not keeping records of people that buy firearms anywhere in this country.
always will be a backup master code or combination, and the easiest ones to get a hold of are the keypad ones. And the reason for that is because there's generally a master or a super master override code that they offer as a, if you can prove who you are, sales receipt, serial number, matching ID to our database of records that has this information, we will freely give you the override codes so you can change your lock. So know that most of the cartridges behind the keypad that you can install in there can be switched. Like, keep the keypad, just take that out with the serial number, throw it in the trash can, get something else from somewhere else like Amazon. Suddenly those records don't match. That's one way to do it, but you have to put in a little elbow grease. You have to change the lock and not just use the one the manufacturer gave you with your dial. You have to get a new locking mechanism that doesn't match the serialized information of the assembled safe that you purchased over the counter. There are ways in which you can get around this, but don't think for a second that every single one, 99.9% of the ones that are manufactured don't keep records like that, because they do.
Yeah.
And I know this because I used to live with a locksmith. So, like, I learned a lot about this stuff. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
My safe, I have a real simple, just big, beefy safe that only has a dial. It has no keypad on it at all.
Yeah, dials,
no
in my opinion,
components to it.
My opinion, the dials are better. And what's even better than that is if you are able to change the entry code to get into it after you purchase it. With usually there's a physical reset key, and then you collect all the rotors, spin it left 100 times or whatever it is, get them all dialed to 0. Then there's usually 2 notches. There's the unlock notch and the reset notch. And then you dial in the new code to the reset notch and then pull the key out of the back, put the safe back together, and suddenly that combination works to lock and unlock it. So don't ever just take the combination that was issued with the safe if you can help it. But these are deterrents, right?
Do you think, knowing this now, do you think that all of the other digital safe companies are all sweating bullets going, like that?
Yep.
The meme of that monkey that's kind of like looking this way, and then he looked, that very sock monkey.
Very much, but like
they're all like, oh.
If you peel back the shroud a little bit, you and I have seen this a lot. Like, there was a pretty famously, I think it was Apple, and I'm not an Apple phone guy. I've always been a Android guy, but Apple pretty much told the government, we're not going to let you in the back door of our phones to help your investigation because that sets a precedence. Like, we're not going to give you some secret back door that the NSA can just leverage to get fucking data out of our users' phones. Fuck that. Now, however, the carrier, the T-Mobiles, the AT&Ts, the Xfinities, they'll cough up whatever because they're a privately owned company and that's what they fucking want to do. They'll do it. Same with Google, which means Android. So if you've watched that stuff pop up in like congressional hearings and things like that before, this happens all the time. It's not just Liberty Gun Safe. I think Liberty Gun Safe is making waves because there's a certain type of person that keeps guns and they respect gun safety, and you just violated something very personal to them. But if they have a cell phone on AT&T, it's not as if the government can't just tap their phones, get the data out of it, check out their phone records, maybe dial into where your GPS is actively locating where you're at. All these things have been happening back and forth in legal battles for 10, 15 years.
True,
so this is not
and
new.
It's
just new,
right?
in this
but there's
industry.
A certain understanding to having, a cell phone. I know this thing is tracking everything I say and do, but it is my choice to carry it.
Yeah.
Not knowing that and that not being disclosed about something that you specifically bought to hold your firearms in, which holds a certain connotation to it as far as freedom and liberty goes,
or your valuables,
and not an invasion of privacy. Right, exactly.
Yeah, Martha Wayne's pearls could have been in there. Who knows? Yeah,
right. And your fancy rock collection, it doesn't really matter what's in there. However, what does matter is that is the most essential point of privacy in any home. Mm-hmm. That's what that means, and that is a giant violation of that privacy.
Well, it's a violation
that this company
of privacy.
Just gave over.
It's a loss of confidence for sure And while this may happen all the time in different sectors, the biggest point of contention I have is even if you knew in the user manual that there's a master code you could get from the manufacturer, it is the fact that they just gave it over without a warrant. They just
not
said,
even a warrant.
Here you go. I mean,
Here you go.
That's the part that is like, okay. So,
and if it was a one-time mistake, I would get that. I would go, oh, that's a bad slip up, and you're going to probably pay the price for this.
Yeah.
But apparently, their parent company, once people started digging, they got pissed, and that's what they do. When they get pissed, they dig. And once people started digging, they found out that the parent company for Liberty Safe is Monomoy Capital Partners LP, and that company
private equity firm or something.
Yep, absolutely. And they have done an enormous amount of donating money to Democrats and to anti-2A policies.
Oof.
And so that parent company has been giving lots and lots and lots of money to Democrat causes and to anti-Second Amendment policymakers to help try to bring on gun control.
Well, and in a childlike last-ditch failed PR junior varsity move, Liberty Safes did go on social media and hear ye, if you want to be removed from our database with your serial number and your master lock code, just email us at this address and we'd happy to take you off there so that we can't share it with the government anymore. So we're helping now, and this is now on you, and you have to make the effort. It's laughable. It's laughable.
With the lack of trust now that they have now, every single person who is even in the slightest bit paranoid is going, "Oh, you want us now on an entire email list?"
That's.
Are you going to hand over the email list too?
Yeah, that was my whole thing. Like you and I were talking offline. I don't recall if we were talking live about this, but I was tinkering with the idea of getting another NFA item, right? And with that, you have to purchase a tax stamp, which means you have to go through an ATF fingerprint and all this other stuff. And to me, it was like, is it annoying? Yes. Is it uncommon? No. Have I gone through this before? Kind of, because when I got my concealed carry license in Washington State, they took my fingerprints, they took pictures of my tattoos. It was very personally violating. Like the sheriff's or police department was allowed to do it. The city police took a lot of information about me, a lot of photos of me. It felt like I was getting processed, and I was, and I have been incarcerated once in my youth before. I was printed then. So it's like, I'm in the system, for what it's worth. I'm already there. So is it really going to matter that much? Not at the end of the day, but it does put me on yet another list, right? So to those that are like, well, let me email in and let your email list know that I not only own a safe, but I'm trying to resist the fact that you could share it with my government is concerning. And I think it's a legitimate one, It was like my internal struggle with like, do I really want to be put on yet another list? At the end of the day, it's not like they don't know. If you listen to any of my podcasts, YouTube feeds for my entire life, it's not like I'm hiding anything about what I believe in or, you know what I'm saying? Like
that's true, but it becomes right, but it becomes a matter of principle too.
But it's very real to your grandfather and your dad and people that are like, I'm going to be put on some fucking email list. I would rather burn this safe and spend my money elsewhere. And these are not cheap. These can get thousands of dollars, especially the vault ones, So
yeah.
You're right. It's a real thing. And I think it should hit people in the heartstrings, pretty aggressively. And I think people need to not only hit people in the wallet, stop purchasing Liberty and stuff like that. But when you go to buy a safe, you can take what I said as gospel or for granted. It's up to you. I know a little bit about this, but not enough to go talk to a private gunsmith or gun safe technician, right? Or a safe tech, locksmith. That's what I'm looking for. Ask them what their opinion is, and then go find a company that you can have an honest conversation with. That's like, can I have all records of this transaction except for the sale price for the merchant itself on the receipt rescinded from any databases? can you not store a master code? And if you have one, can you furnish me all of that information in this transaction where it's just gone? And then you do whatever the fuck you want. And even if you don't trust them, I would still recommend flip the lock in it, reset the code if it's a dial one, get a completely mismatched separate replacement diode if it's an electronic keypad one. You don't necessarily have to burn your safe and get a different brand, but when you go out and get one, ask some questions. Like, this stuff's
Agreed.
important, and it's starting to just chip away more and more at confidence, you know? And to your point, if there's a private equity group that owns 50 fucking companies and the parent company is just dumping money into a far left ideology that continues, it's no real reason that it wouldn't trickle down that, hey, if the government says jump, you ask them how high, and it doesn't matter what ethics are. Just do it. That's not a surprise to me at all, you know?
No. I kind of go a little more Tom and Jerry with it. I think that what we should do is create an entire marketplace where everyone buys whatever safes they want. And then what we do is we have an open trade market, and we just move them around like cups, like the little ball in the cups. Like that way, nobody knows.
It's the Silk Road of gun safe buying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that more confusion, like I have this idea that every single person, every Republican across the board, every independent across the board, everybody should all just register as Democrats now.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Just register. All of us register as Democrats. What would they do if then everybody is now registered as a Democrat? There's no more two-party system. There's no third party. It's all just one, and we all just get to vote. And they wouldn't be able to do anything. They wouldn't be able to rig elections. They wouldn't be able to do anything because everyone's registered, and you just get to vote for who you want to vote for. And I just think that would be fun chaos in a Tom and Jerry kind of way.
While I agree with the whimsical nature of what you just said, I do think that the super PACs and the primo majorities and the vested interests would find the leftiest of the lefts and just somehow ascend them to on top because it's a unilaterally accepted voting process all the way down the line.
Oh yeah. It's a pipe dream and it wouldn't work. But I just thought that if the ship's going down, let's have some fun.
Oh yeah,
let's just make chaos out of it. Make them all freak out and panic behind the scenes and scramble around trying to put the fire out. That's just basically what I live for now, because at this point, it's harder and harder to see the light at the end of the tunnel when you've got both parties on either side of it shoveling rocks in front of the end of the tunnel as fast as they can.
Yeah, but I have a broken dream about this because I know there's big holes in the logic, but I've always kind of liked the idea of voting we have a two-party majority, but voting a cabinet into place into all three of the branches, right? And then the president, the person that actually has the executive veto authority, the person that has to push the red button, the person that has to go talk about what matters, that has to be a draft. So like any eligible U.S. citizen could just get called up to be the president in the same fashion you get called up to jury duty. And while you'll have informed people that can let you know what both sides are thinking, you have to start sweating and crying. And that's just part of what it takes to be an American. You might have to be put in the position to run some shit. And that's just the responsibility you accept for all the freedoms that we take for granted. And it's like, I
love it.
I think a reasonable person would be scared shitless and come out with way more gray hair and wrinkles than when they went in 4 years ago, kind of thing. There's obvious problems with that because you could get a psychopath in there that's like, give me the red button. So like, I get that there's flaws with what I just said, but some sort of responsibility and accountability that a citizen has to take in the form of, well, then you might have to be in charge is kind of appealing to me in some way,
Yeah. I actually, I've got good feelings about this.
Yeah.
I would like,
like there's going to be a group of people that are like, you don't get the red button on the first day. And if you're asking the wrong kind of questions, your fucking vice president gets a shot. You're going to get demoted to get the fuck out of the office. But I don't know. It's such a. It's so whimsical, dude. All of this is just.
We're in such a weird time of politics right now that these type of like out of the box kind of like over the top theories are, fun to play with, because why not at this point, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And it's fun to kind of do some political theory running, but
and that was like, it was a different podcast and it was in the heart of the pandemic, but you and I solved the defunding the police problem in 30 minutes. Just talking about it, and you were like, hey, they've got to test into it. They have to be from the same community they're serving. They and I added on to it like, hey, if I have to have a concealed weapons license and go through testing, so do you. You have to qualify to carry a gun, and then I projected, what if you look at the pipeline of where these cops are coming from? I think the U.S. military should open the books to the police department. What was their psyche eval like? What were they resistant to authority? What kind of merits or demerits did they have on their record? And these all count toward your eligibility to be a public servant at that capacity, right? And if you couldn't hack it, there's still a job for you in the state or local government. You could be a fucking clerk. You don't get to be a cop. So
there's two years.
We did that in 30 minutes, by the way.
Right. I know. Yeah. And then there's 2 years of training. Yeah. It's an academy-based training. You can get into it right out of high school. But I also said that I don't think that anybody under the age of 30 should be a cop. So why not work the private sector for a little while, maybe work some security jobs, and then go through the 2-year academy where the first year, all you do is learn about the Constitution and people's rights.
And the laws.
And then, and the laws. And then the second year is training. It's much like a tattoo apprentice. That's basically how I do it. They don't touch a machine until the second year.
Right.
And so they have to understand the history. They have to understand the etiquette. They have to understand all of these other things before they can even get to putting a machine on skin. Mm-hmm. So I don't see why I could have those standards and yet the police department doesn't.
Right.
I think that you need to abolish
the union.
All of the union. The union needs to go. It is literally a harboring point for bad cops.
And if you guys are thinking that we're radicals about this, let me explain to you. If I'm an officer in a union and I have misconduct to an egregious degree and get fired from my job, the union can seal up my fucking paperwork. I can go across town to the sheriff's department with the same resume and get a job over there. Still in the union.
You can move
and
to another town.
The longer I'm there, the more money I get. It has nothing to do with merit or my performance or my drive to get better as an individual or at my job. Anyway, go on.
Right. So but I'm opposed to almost all unions, so that should to be transparent about that. But I think what it does is it just harbors bad behavior and gives an excuse for it and protects it. But that being said, I think that you should be. I don't think that anyone under the age of 30 has the temperament to be a law enforcement officer. I think that you should be forced within the first 3 years of your duty that you actually patrol the area you live in, that you actually know your neighbors, that you're actually there to protect and serve your neighbors.
Yep.
And then you can move out of that. But also I think that there should be evaluations that after a contract that you are contracted to, that you get quarterly evals or even, every half a year evals. And then if you get good scores and it's all merit based, let's say you get just above average score, above a certain percentage, then at that point you get a raise. But if you get excellent marks, you get a raise and are eligible for
promotion,
right? Mm-hmm. But if you get below, you don't get to be a cop anymore. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple. Like, that's it. Like, you mind your P's and Q's, and you can go be a security guard at a bank, or you can go be a security guard somewhere else, but never again. Like, if you do some egregious activity or are so poor at your job, you obviously don't have what it takes after 2 years. And at the age of 30, something's wrong. You got to go. So there's a lot of things that we came up with. This is just like scratching the surface, but we fixed the entire institution, like I said, in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it would be fairly easy to implement.
And further, like if you look at the published salary brackets of like metropolitan police officers, it's sad. It's sad and it's savage. And to your note about unions, I do work for a job at a place that has faced unionization a time or two. I think what's lost on a lot of the people that are fighting so hard for unions that have never worked for one or are in one, that is something you don't understand or should probably get really familiar with, and I mean do some homework before signing up for it, is you are paying for somebody else to have a conversation with your employer on your behalf. And when you're in a union, you may or may not be eligible for your home or your parent company's benefits package anymore, because those are offered to W-2 employees, not to union employees. And that is because there's collective bargaining that happens with the things that you can have and the things that you can't have. And they always bargain down to the lowest median average, the benefits package that you get in a union, because it's guaranteed and it won't change. And because the proceeds of any overhead that may or may not have been part of the collective bargaining goes to the union. It's the very same union organization you then have to pay dues into to be a part of that union. So will it guarantee your working hours and your nights and weekends? Probably. Does it help you out with all of your benefits and maybe expenses, bonus eligibility, medical insurance, things of that nature? No, it really doesn't.
No,
it doesn't at all. And I think you should really think about that stuff as you go through it. So by and large, I'm not a fan of unions either, but it's not because I'm taking a party line. I actually have done a lot of due diligence on this for reasons. And because I work for Redacted. So there are things that make that pretty real. As far as the cops are concerned, make that job pay enough to be desirable. You look at the salary brackets of the inner city police and stuff, and we're talking like between $40,000 and $75,000 a year. Oh
yeah. Yeah, we can't, in our area, we can't, like, I'm part of the...
Can you live on that in Seattle?
I'm part of the...
Nope.
I know.
So... Around
here, actually, even in North Idaho, like, I am part of the Sheriff's Department Citizen Alliance Committee. Mm-hmm. So basically, they go between the public and the Sheriff's Department, because we have a really active and honest Sheriff's Department here. And like I've said before, I'm really good friends with the sheriff of the area. He set up this program to have that channel of conversation, to have accountability on both ends, right, and to come up with ideas that may come from the private sector. It's a really genius idea. However, one of the things that we get to go through is the financials of the sheriff's department in this area, which is county paid. Like for instance, the city cops, they lose a lot of their guys to the city cops because they're paying double and triple down in Coeur d'Alene, and, any young cop who's got a wife and a couple of kids and is just trying to make it, it's really hard for him to leave that temptation on the table, or go to Spokane or Spokane Valley, which I tattoo a lot of these guys who are like, I used to be part of the Sheriff's Department. I loved it there. I actually hate my job now, especially the Washington ones, because they can't actually enforce any law. But they are like,
funny how that works.
I don't. Right. Yeah. And it's super dangerous for them over in Spokane now. So they're like, it's not, now the money's almost not worth it. But they're just like, I don't like my job, but it pays so well that I can't walk away from it and go back. So the retention level of the sheriff's department, they're down like 30 people at the jail, like 15 people at dispatch. They're down like 40 rolling officers, and the county's huge. And so they're so stretched and they're doing triple shifts. Everyone's exhausted. They're trying to hire people, and they're trying to do really creative things of like going to the schools, the high schools, or going to the military, or recruiting out of those areas. And then they're getting a lot of applicants who are absolutely willing to take the job until they show up here, and then they go, "Oh, this
Right.
salary." I can't even rent a house in this area for that salary. I'll have to live so far out of the jurisdiction of where I even work that I can't take this job. I want it, but I can't take it. So we've been we've been really fighting with, and now we've got a lot of better county commissioners, but the county commissioners are actually really trying to channel a lot of the county revenue into the sheriff's department where it honestly belongs.
Right.
And going back to even the New Mexico situation with the sheriffs who were saying this isn't constitutional and we're not going to enforce this and we're not going to abide by this. I was surprised when you said that the police chief said that. That's actually pretty amazing, because the police chief is not actually bound to the Constitution.
No.
They are employees of the state. So that's why the constitutional sheriff, who is, by the way, for all you listeners out there, I know because sheriff in any county
You're
the
cutting out.
Is the highest authority.
Your network is dying, sir.
Oh no! Oh no!
Yeah, I can still see you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you just sound like a robot.
Robot.
Yeah, I don't know. I think your bandwidth just got crushed at your house. Maybe you'll give it a second and see if it comes back. But yeah, it's like you'll see it on the YouTube playback. Oh no, I think we lost him. No, we lost him. Maybe it's my network too. Let's pull it up and see. Network monitoring. Yeah, I don't know. He had a really salient point that is now gone. That's unfortunate. Well, we had a network die, so I'm going to end it right here. If you have any thoughts on what you heard tonight, please feel free to reach out to us. The Modern Relics podcast at gmail.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. I really appreciate it. We were having a great conversation. That's going to cut it out for tonight. And we'll talk with y'all very soon. Have a good night. For Lucky, I'm Angel. Peace.